Many of you already think that Spider-Man, that Tom Holland's Spider-Man in the MCU, is more like an Iron Boy anyway. A lot of you didn't necessarily like his portrayal of Spider-Man and think that he would make a better like Iron Man Jr. I somewhat agree. I think he was fine as Spider-Man, but I somewhat agree here. Now I'm making this video because the MCU is like released some of their stuff that's going to come out in Phase 5 and 6 of the MCU, and Ironheart is going to be one of them. Now I have not read the comics of it, so I have no idea what really happens in that, but I get the gist that it's, a girl. I know that the character is Riri Williams. She's a black college girl, I think, and she just sort of gets Tony's armor and makes herself a suit. I'm not exactly sure how that happens or what her relation to him is in the comics, but so the reason why I'm making this is because in the MCU, there has not been any mention of somebody called Riri Williams in the MCU at all. So Tony does not know this person at all, pretty much. They could say retroactively that he knew her, she studied it, but that wouldn't really work very well because they haven't shown that in the films. That would be very shoehorned with that type of approach. Or if they had somebody like Shuri from Black Panther, a lot of people said, she could be the next Iron Man because she knows tech and she worked with Black Panther and is pretty good with engineering. She's very smart like Tony. And it's yeah, I guess in that sense that can make sense, but she doesn't know Tony at all. I don't even think they've ever met. So that'd be really weird to take up his mantle, especially with T'Challa and all that stuff. And then there's that trailer, and that's a whole different situation all on itself. But anyway, I'm making this because I think that Peter Parker, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, would make for a good Iron Man in the future. I think that there's a lot of things that pretty much go toward that back that up. That would make sense for Peter Parker to be the new Iron Man. Many, many freaking things with it. I mean, obviously, Tony Stark basically took him under his wing entirely. Ever since Civil War, he's taken Spider-Man under his wing and has been trying to show him some of the way here and there. Peter is a smart kid, a very smart kid above his class, basically. He made his own little web shootings and everything, and seems to have some level of understanding of the technology that Stark is able to use. Now, it doesn't seem like he has a full understanding like how Stark might, but there's something I can explain with that in a minute that could also lend to him being an Iron Man in the future. So what annoys me is that after Tony's death, they kind of portray it like he didn't leave that much behind for the world to benefit from. Not saying that he left nothing behind, but it seems like he didn't have any, there wasn't a whole bunch of money to go to a certain place or technology to certain places or to certain people to help certain things. It seems like it was kind of just left as whatever. Maybe he left a gift for Peter Parker. I never saw Far From Home, so I could be wrong in that he left something around. But as far as I could tell in the other MCU films, there's not really much of a example of stuff that Stark has left behind. If anything, they muddy him even worse by still kind of referring to him as that asshole rich guy, and that he didn't compensate to help any of the Avengers that were helping out at all financially, with Falcon and Winter Soldier. He just hasn't helped any of them at all, and it kind of seems like that's not how that would be, because we could even look in the MCU for examples of how that would not be what happens, how he would have definitely looked after other people. In Iron Man 2, he is dying in that film, and the whole film he's trying to set up other people to have something for in case he were to die. He gets the company over to Pepper and makes sure that that's running well with her. He lets Rhodey take the suits, that there is an Iron Man in some way, shape, or form. He's looking into other stuff. In Civil War, he's trying to really better the future. He's trying to help college kids. That's where you could have maybe introduced somebody like Riri Williams in that movie, maybe Civil War, but I don't think they did. I don't remember her being mentioned at all in that film. So it's but he's trying to better the future. He's trying to do his best to leave a legacy and to make sure that there's something left for the next generations. And they don't seem to really point to that anymore in any of the current MCU films. But I think that if you were to have another film in the future with this, I think that you could, have that start taking place. That maybe he had these plans, but they were on hold. They weren't to just be released immediately. Maybe he's got people in his company that were in Pepper's company, we could say, whatever, Stark Industries, he's got some type of layers in there that people can have access, but only after a certain amount of time, or after something is achieved or somebody solves something, then it's unlocked. Something like that. I feel like he leaves something behind that we can use to go forward. I think that would make sense. Like if there's a door that his company can't even unlock or nobody can hack into, but somebody has to solve some specific thing, and then boom, that thing unlocks. Or maybe it's got some DNA thing that is attached. I don't know, because I'm trying to think about how this could actually work in the MCU as it is. And as far as No Way Home goes, people, after the spell thing and all the multiverse stuff, people don't know who Peter Parker is. Now, I still think that Tony Stark knew Peter Parker, but you could say that maybe if we were to rearrange time, that wish thing gets really, or the spell thing gets really confusing when you think about it in this type of way. So let's say that Stark knew a person who he didn't remember was Peter Parker. It was a student, and he left some type of a program thing for after he's 21. He could maybe have access to, if he has the right amount of knowledge, to unlock this puzzle or something. Then he'd have access to some of the technology that he left behind, because he doesn't want his technology to just be in anybody's hands. He wants it to be in people's hand that he trusts. So I think that would be kind of something that you could maybe do, where Peter Parker is Spider-Man for a few more years, which you could also show in this time that maybe he's training another Spider-Man or somebody else to be a Spider-Man. I don't know. Again, the whole alternate Spider-Man things get really confusing, because I don't actually know anything about it, other than there's like a gajillion Spider-Men in the comics, and I have no idea why, because one radioactive bug, boom, an accident, but now there's a bunch of different ones that pop up somehow. I don't fucking know how that works, but whatever. You can have another Spider-Man in this, however way they want to do it with multiverse. I don't know. But I think it would make sense to have Peter be the next Iron Man. And if we would want to say that maybe he's not as much of an engineer as Tony Stark was, he knew all these engineering blueprints and everything, maybe you could have it where that kid in Iron Man 3, whom was at the funeral in Endgame for Tony, maybe he grew up to be an engineer. He took after Tony. He saw him makeshift a lot of stuff. That would be an interesting duo if you brought back that kid that knew Tony a little bit, and have Peter Parker and have them work together, where you have that kid be like the engineer trying to help make the suits with Peter Parker, like they're a team working together. And maybe they both have the suits, but I don't know. I'd say just Peter Parker, but if we're trying to be technical here, whatever. One's the engineer, one's the main suit hero guy, and they can work together and talk. I think that would be an interesting dynamic that you can create there. Or even, again, you could have something set up with Tony's daughter, where Peter Parker ends up trying to teach her some of the ropes as well, where he does take up the role as Iron Man for a while, but he's trying to get the daughter into it as well, trying to get her. You can set her up for the future to join at some point. I have no idea how old she'd be at this point, probably around 10 years old or so she wouldn't be ready to fight necessarily anytime soon, but and go a few years later till she's 15 or whatever, be around Spider-Man's age when he started, and you could have something set up there already, and with characters that were around before and that knew Tony. I think that would make a lot more sense here, instead of just kind of having some random girl take it randomly and just kind of just say that she's an Iron Man, but a chick now, Ironheart, and better than before. They always have it where they're better than the predecessors, which, I don't know, man. It's kind of hard to top Tony, and it's annoying when they try to have them start as being better than them as well. That's really annoying. That's why, again, Peter would be good, because he obviously would struggle a bit. He'd have a lot of problems to overcome, a lot of things to deal with and work out and learn about. And this could lead to great conversations with Rhodes, could lead to great conversations with Pepper, with Happy, all these different things. Even if it's post people forgetting who Peter Parker is, I think you can still have a lot of new stuff established with as if it's the first time. But that could also be part of some of the comedic bits where he knows a lot about them, but they don't know anything about him. They could be like, what? Just little things like that could be around. I think this could fucking work as it was. But then again, of course, silly me, it's the MCU. The writers aren't very good. I know they're not going to actually make this ever. They're not ever going to do this, and it probably wouldn't be done well even if they tried. But if we had like the same type of passion that they had with the first, I'd say 2 phases of the MCU, the third one's good, but has some little issues here and there. If you had some of that passion and put that into one of these movies here with the future Iron Man, I think that would work. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this. Some of you might agree, and maybe I don't know. Like there could be more evidence as well that could go to this, to lend to this. That makes sense. But let me know what you guys think, and have a good one.